Hello and welcome to episode 45 of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Today I have an incredible guest joining me, Justyn Backhouse. Justyn is a former New South Wales police officer who dedicated 25 years to law enforcement, serving in both Highway Patrol and the elite PolAir unit, where he was involved in high-stakes missions ranging from high-speed pursuits to daring rescues. His career, marked by courage and resilience, also exposed him to the psychological toll that first responders often carry in silence. Diagnosed with PTSD in 2021, Justyn turned to writing as part of his healing journey, penning Hidden Scars, a powerful and candid memoir that reveals the hidden realities of policing and the profound impacts trauma can have on mental health. Beyond his policing career, Justyn has become a passionate advocate for mental health awareness, especially within the first responder communities. His work now focuses on breaking down stigma, fostering understanding, and offering hope to those facing similar struggles. Justyn's book, Hidden Scars, is an absolute must-read. I loved learning not only about his journey navigating PTSD, but also about the incredible operations PolAir is involved in, all from Justyn's raw and honest perspective. I do want to offer a content warning for this episode. We cover a lot of ground, including an intense critical incident that Justyn was involved in, so please take care of yourself while listening. Feel free to pause and come back to it whenever you need. Justyn's book, Hidden Scars, is available from today, and trust me, you will not regret grabbing a copy. Now, let's dive into this powerful conversation with Justyn Backhouse.
Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, the podcast that explores journeys of resilience and hope. I'm Rosie, a yoga and breathwork teacher and founder of Tactical Yoga Australia. As a former soldier's wife, mum to 3 beautiful kids, and a medically retired New South Wales police officer with PTSD, I understand the challenges of navigating mental health in the first responder and veteran community. Join us for incredible stories from individuals who've confronted the depths of mental illness and discovered their path to happiness and purpose, as well as solo episodes and expert discussions. Together, we'll uncover the tools to help you navigate your journey toward a brighter, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for helpful insights, practical tips, or just a friendly reminder that you're not alone, Triumph Beyond Trauma has got your back. You matter, and your journey to a happier, more meaningful life starts right here. Justyn, welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma. I'm so excited to have you here after reading your book. How are you?
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks for having me. I'm good, thanks.
Awesome. So usually I just run with where people got started from and their childhood. So do you want to have a chat about that?
Sure. Pretty average childhood. I grew up in Sydney, near Hornsby. Got one brother. He's younger than me. Yeah, mum and dad, brother. Grew up riding BMX bikes and playing in the bush and doing all the good things. Pretty average childhood. Didn't really do great in school. I had average marks. I didn't really work too hard in high school, and so I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to go. But yeah, I think in the background I had this idea about joining the police, and that goes back to my childhood. I think my earliest memory was a policeman coming to our primary school and coming to see us, and we're all sitting there on the floor looking up at this man, and he's telling us all about these great things that he was doing, and then he went and unloaded his revolver and passed it around the class and his handcuffs, and we all got to hold it and have a look at it. And I just thought, for 6-year-old me, that was just awesome.
Yeah.
I can't believe he did it now.
The 80s were a wild time though.
Yeah. It was different times. So I think that made an impression on me. And, when you're young, a lot of kids gravitate towards wanting to be a fireman or a policeman or something like that. And I think that was in the back of my mind. But yeah, it wasn't until after I left high school that I really got serious about it. I went to uni for a year, didn't love what I was studying. It was IT. I found it a bit boring. So I was working part-time, went to TAFE, did a couple of years there in business. And then I decided to drop an application in for the police. So yeah, and that was interesting because my parents weren't super supportive. I mean, they were supportive of the police, but I think they were a bit worried about me and being in that sort of situation, the risks involved. So yeah, it was an interesting dinner conversation. So 1997, I joined and went down to the academy in May, class 270. And it was a lot of fun. I think there was about 200 in the class. So 10 subclasses. Yeah, good times. I was there in winter. and Goulburn in winter. Yeah,
Yeah.
not friendly.
I started in May as well. It's horrible.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, like the
Yeah.
frost on the grass and the,
Oh,
oh God.
it's
Um,
brutal.
yeah. So, but yeah, had a good time down there and made some friends. And my student posting was to Hornsby. So I went there for a month and then came back and marched out in November 97 and went to Castle Hill. So that was my first station.
Yeah, nice.
Castle Hill was a bit quieter back in the day. We were on the same channel as Parramatta, Merrylands, Granville, and they were all busy. You could hear the jobs going off, all the urgent jobs going off, and our patrol was a little bit slower, but we had lots of open areas, rural roads. We went all the way up to nearly Wiseman's Ferry, so it's a big patrol. So a lot of driving around. It was fun. A few interesting times with some characters in those days. Yeah.
Um,
So I went to Rose Hill for a few months in general duties. I had a rotation down there. It was super busy and heaps of fun. And when I was there, I actually was in my first on-duty crash, which was just crazy. I was working one night shift. I was a passenger in a sedan, and we were going to back up a car crew. I don't remember what the job was, but we were urgent. We were driving pretty quick, and we came around a corner, and we were just absolutely flying, and the front of the car clipped the median strip. We went sideways, sliding across the road. I did not have a clue what was going on. I was just totally panicked. We hit a curb, began to roll over. The car rolled several times. There's bags and equipment and torches and everything rolling around in the cabin, glass shattering, and we smashed into the front of a house. So yeah, that was my first introduction to probably danger at work. And I think before then I had this real feeling of invulnerability. When you start in the cops, you feel like, oh, nothing's going to happen. We'll put the lights on and people are going to get out of the way and we'll be fine. And no, I'll be fine. And after that, I was like, wow, this
yeah.
is crazy. It really rattled me for a little while. So, but I got just minor injuries. I was really lucky. So I finished up that posting, went back to Castle Hill, and then not even 6 months later, I was in another crash
Right.
again. Yeah, another night shift passenger. We were going to another urgent job. We ran off the road, skimmed a telegraph pole, and with the roof and rolled and ended up in a paddock off the side of the road. It was actually on Sunny Holt Road near Blacktown, but back in the days when Sunny Holt Road there was actually a 2-lane road, believe it or not. And we went up this embankment, skimmed this telegraph pole, we've landed in the paddock, and all the lights come on and the airbags have gone off and it's just real quiet. And then I look out and there's cows looking at us in the paddock, just looking at the car. This is just crazy. So yeah, like having the two crashes close together did make me a bit wary of doing urgent duties. So I think it definitely slowed me down for a while.
Did you say you were the passenger both times as well?
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
how did that go? Trusting your offsiders?
yeah, not good, not good. I had a bit of a drama for a while. I remember soon after that I was in a car and we had to go to a job, and as soon as the sirens came on, I felt a bit of panic. And yeah, I was definitely uncomfortable because it all happened so fast, so violent, high speed. And it was that feeling of, I think it was my first introduction to the helplessness feeling like that's associated with PTSD. So I was a passenger. I had no control over what was happening. I was just holding on for my life. And I honestly thought in the first crash that I might die. That's how serious I thought it was because I had never been in anything like that before my life. It was so fast, and yeah, so it really scared me.
I
So
I don't know if I've spoken about this. When I was before I got my second hook, I was involved in an accident on duty and rode off a police car, and I was driving.
yeah,
And can happen so fast. And my offsider that I was with, he obviously was passenger, and he knew that I'd lost control before I did, which was,
Oh, wow.
we were on a country dirt road, Urjo, to an
Yeah.
accident, of course,
Yeah.
going to an accident, had one on the way. And it just happens so fast.
Yeah. True.
And it's so scary. And I was pregnant at the time, but I didn't know.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was pretty traumatic, but I just remember going to the hospital afterwards. We were both fine. Neither of us were injured or anything like that. Probably my pride a little bit. And then 2 days later, like rushing to get to the doctor to get back to work, like as soon as I could. I didn't, and no
yeah.
one asked me if I was okay. Like physically, yeah, you're okay. You know, is your neck okay? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But there was no mental health questioning
Yeah.
whatsoever. And it took me such a
Yeah.
long time to feel comfortable. I think still, like there's still something in me, and I only had one accident,
Yeah.
that I don't quite trust other people driving, even though it was me that had the accident. So I
Yeah.
can't imagine how you would have gone having so many,
It definitely affected me. And even years later when I was in highway patrol, and some people you trust more than others, but I know sitting in the passenger seat of highway cars, there were times when I would get quite nervous years later, just that feeling of safety. Yeah, I rushed back too. I was like, remember when we did 8-hour shifts and it was a block of 7 night shifts. And so both the crashes happened on a night shift. And I went to the doctor both times, my doctor, and said, "Hey, I'm okay, I'm fine. I just had this happen," and I rushed back to work. I might have missed a shift the first time, but then I went back. I was like, I'm not taking time off.
Yeah.
I didn't want to show the guys that I was beaten. I was like, no, I'm fine. Throw me back in. That was just how you were. I don't know.
No,
It seems crazy now.
it does seem
Yeah,
crazy. I think I've actually written that down. Like that seems crazy to me now that you
yeah.
didn't even consider any mental health repercussions at all.
No, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, and I didn't have any counselling. I didn't want any counselling. I wouldn't have known about getting any counselling. That was not something that was discussed back then, like as you know. Yeah, so I continued in GDs. I was in GDs I only did about 2.5 years before I went to highway, but standard sort of jobs. I remember another thing that happened to me in GDs actually. Probably one of my first death messages. And it's never a pleasant job. I don't know of any cop that would ever put their hand up to go and do a job like that. But we had a double fatal crash. A couple of young guys were killed after leaving a pub. And we went around to the house. It was after midnight. We went around to the house of the parents of one of the young people that had died. And I was working with an older guy, senior constable, and I said, "Look, I'll do this job. I want to get experience." I was very junior in, probably a few months in, and knocked on the door. Man opened, lights come on, and I just froze. And I said, "Okay, we come in." Yeah. Then the wife came down the stairs. Meanwhile, I'm just looking around, seeing photos on the wall of family and people, and it just hit me, and I couldn't. Like I froze, and I felt terrible about it because my job was to deliver this death message, which is this incredibly difficult but important role. And I didn't know what to say. All of a sudden, I felt like an intruder in their home. Their their son had been killed. I was waking them up to tell them that they weren't going to see their son again, and I know the gravity of it. I think just hit me, and so my partner took over, and he delivered it, and he was great. And I remember afterwards just feeling shame and feeling like, well, I couldn't do that job, and I felt I had really knocked me for six. I went on to do plenty of death messages, but that one got under my skin.
Yeah.
And it could have been because of the age of them, but that was just one of those jobs that stood out in my mind.
What did your senior officer say to you afterwards? Like, did he talk about it with you or go through it at all?
I think he did, yeah. I think he just said, "Hey, just next time," and he was all right about it. Like he wasn't critical because we also had to take them to the hospital to ID the body and all that. Yeah, I think I was just overwhelmed with
Yeah.
it. I felt a little bit emotional and I wasn't expecting it. I really was totally unprepared for the amount of the gravity of it and the emotions that I would feel knocking on that door. I went into it probably pretty blind, thinking, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to tell them that their son's been killed, not having any experience and not having any appreciation for what I was walking into.
Yeah.
So I don't know that any amount of training could prepare you for that as a 22-year-old police officer walking up to a door, knocking on a door in the middle of the night. It's one of those things.
Yeah. It's
Um,
brutal.
So, yeah, I went into highway in 2000 before the Olympics, and I loved it. I loved working out by myself, driving around. We were not heavily tasked, so I could basically go wherever I wanted in the patrol. I loved chasing work and had some good times there, but lots of accidents. We had lots of crashes in our patrol because we had all those country roads, some fatals, quite a few, and other jobs. Yeah, it was interesting time. The thing about highway is a lot of people don't realize, although you're not general duties and you're not first response as such, you're still going to jobs, you're still turning up and backing up other crews. And we would go to hold-ups or bulk domestics or, brawls, all sorts of jobs. I remember going to a shooting, there was a report of shots fired. We turned up at a house, my partner and I, and you get these calls and half the time it's fireworks. You really don't think there's going to be anything in it. Anyway, we got to the door. There'd been a couple of calls about gunshots. Get to the door, knock on the door, no answer. Walk inside, and there's a revolver lying on the carpet in the middle of the floor. We're like, oh, great. So it's guns out, and there's blood splatter, blood trail up the hallway. And I thought, oh, God, like, what is this? So we're going up down the hallway, clearing the rooms. I'm thinking, is there a shooter in the house? What's going on? Your heart's pumping. You get to the room in the end, and there was a lady on the floor. She'd had a gunshot wound to her shoulder. So she was in a bad way. I turned around, cleared the rest of the house, and my partner started on the first aid. She survived and ended up being a self-harm incident, attempted self-harm. So that was quite confronting. Yeah, just an example of you really don't know what is going to wait you when you answer these jobs and you go to houses and that sort of thing.
Which is like so exciting at the start.
Yeah.
And then like for me, I was always sort of general duties, but dabbled in a few other things.
Mm.
That was the thing that sort of tipped me over the edges, was that exact thing.
Yeah.
Found exciting at the start. It was like, oh, I just don't know what's going to happen today.
Yeah, that's the appeal of it, I reckon.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, the unknown. And you live for the action when you start. You're young and you're full of bravado and you just want to go to the urgent jobs. You want the double beepers. You want to get in the action. And so, yeah, it was fun. And those busy shifts where you bounce from job to job to job, and it's great. The time goes quickly and you're having heaps of fun if you're in a good team. I had a great team, real good, hard workers, young people. Like it was good fun.
What drew you to highway patrol?
I always liked driving. I always loved cars and that sort of thing. The appeal for me was being out on the road.
Yeah.
Out by myself on the road, driving around, and also it was a break from general duties. I don't think I could have stayed in general duties long term. I've got an enormous amount of respect for people that do. I was frustrated. I didn't have the patience in the end, I don't think. But yeah, I wanted to be proactive. I wanted to have my own time and I wanted to have the freedom to get out and drive around and find work. And that really ticked that box. So as a young cop, it was a great job. So that was awesome. Was involved in a lot of, went to bushfires, a lot of bushfires, events, major events like that in highway. Went to the Cronulla riots. We were very mobile, and that was one of the best parts of it. You could respond, you could go wherever you wanted. And there was no issue with that. I think, yeah, I didn't realize, I think at the time, stuff was creeping up on me a little bit. Like you'd go to jobs, fatal accidents and stuff, and you'd sort of just do the job and try to push it behind you. And because like we said, you didn't talk about mental health in those days. And so we just kept on going. But I think in the background, in the back of my mind, it was starting to accumulate and it was starting to add up.
And
And
is that something that you noticed at the time, or is it just sort of now looking back that you can?
no, looking back now, I don't think I did at the time. I know there was some jobs that rattled me, but you got on with it, and the next shift or you were fine, and that was that. But definitely some of those earlier jobs have come back to haunt me, and that's funny how the brain holds on to stuff like that for years.
Yeah.
And you think you're fine, like you think you've processed it, and it's way back in your memory, but it just comes back up again. So I had a great time in highway. I ended up doing about 7 or 8 years in highway. And then I got the opportunity to go to PolAir for APEC. They were taking on additional crew. And so it was a Section 66, a temporary transfer. And I got the chance to go there and be trained up as a TFO crewy on aircraft. And that was great. I loved it. Being able to fly, I never thought I'd get a job like that. And be able to go there. It was a really small unit. There's only about 70 people there, 70 staff all up. So I flew there during APEC. We were doing motorcades, supporting dignitary protection, in addition to all the other regular jobs we were doing, the search and rescues, the missing people, the patrol stuff. It was great fun. So yeah, PolAir was amazing. The training was incredible. Helicopter underwater escape training. So, we train by getting in this little cage and be lowered into a swimming pool. And then you're in there with your mates and the cage spins around 360 degrees. You're upside down. You're wearing blackout goggles. You've got to try and escape, swim out of the cage, and it simulates a ditching helicopter in the ocean. Stuff like that was just incredible. Yeah, so it was a steep learning curve, but lots of fun, and got to travel the state. I reckon one of the best parts of working at PolAir was traveling the state, supporting local police and specialist commands all over in a massive range of jobs. Yeah, it's good fun.
So you only got to have a secondment there for a little while, didn't you? And then you had
I went there. So it was a Section 66, so I had to give up my position at my old command, and I went there and ended up being about 9 months there. And I was hoping to get a full-time position thereafter, but there was only a couple of slots, so I had to go on a waiting list. So I went back to highway again and cooled my heels for another 18 months. And so then I went back. 2009, I went back permanently. So
nice.
Yeah.
What was your favorite part of do you reckon?
PolAir.
Yeah.
I'd say doing rescues and stuff like that. Flying out, getting a job, like a search tasking, flying off into some remote area of the state. It's just 3 people, a helicopter, you've got your coordinates of where you're going, and you just go off there and you've got to plan this search, and you're meeting the local police. You're flying over terrain that's just so varied and so remote often and so rugged, seeing these beautiful places that you wouldn't normally go to. And then if you're lucky and it all comes together, you find the missing person and you can help rescue them. And that's just the most incredible feeling to get that result. Yeah, I'll never forget flying out into some of these communities, and you'd get the call. It could be anywhere in the state, and you'd fly out there and there's a couple of local police there, maybe the rescue coordinator, search coordinator, and the families are there and they're looking for their loved one, and it's really personal. Like it feels really intimate, because often they're small communities. There might be one-man police stations or small police stations. They know a lot of the people in town. It's really personal, and it was really. I really liked being able to come in and help those communities and bring those resources in. And we didn't always get a good result. Sometimes for whatever reason, we either couldn't find them or we found them and it was too late. And that was part of it. But at the very least, you were able to bring your resources to a situation that was really quite difficult. Being up in the air in a helicopter, you got such a good vantage point. We could search massive areas, and it's so much safer than often sending people into the bush, especially in rugged terrain where you got cliffs and all sorts of hazards. So yeah, we we could really add some value to those sort of jobs. So I really liked that. And I
Yeah.
also liked getting out of the office, away
Oh,
from the
yeah.
bosses. Away from the bosses, just like that's it. You're just gone for the day or maybe a couple of days, just doing your job. You're really answering to no one. You're just self-managing, and it's just great work.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
went for sort of like 3/4 through your book, we went for a bushwalk the other day,
yeah,
with some local waterfalls. And
yeah,
I was just looking up, like once we'd got there and I was sort of looking up and I'm like, oh, after reading, about how you did your rescues and all that sort of stuff and
yeah,
how tricky it actually is. I never, you know,
yeah,
of course it's tricky, but I didn't realize how tricky until I was reading your book. And I was just looking around going, oh my God, like this would be actually really hard to get someone out of here if something happened. Cause there's always, how kids are like
yeah,
jumping off waterfalls and all that sort of stuff.
yeah,
Um, and my husband and I are always quite aware of it. And then looking around, I'm like, oh wow, this would actually be really, really tricky to do that. So
yeah.
yeah, hats
We
off to you
we
guys.
we worked a lot with rescue and places like the Blue Mountains where they've got their own part-time rescue up there. Those guys are out there and they know the area like the back of their hands. They're local experts, but there's a lot of places that it might be a 3 hour walk in,
Right.
um, and they get to the person and the person might have a sprained ankle or they might just be exhausted or hypothermic or what have you. And there's sometimes we can get the ambulance helicopter in. If it's a medical, they'll go in and that's their job. But other times it might be just a case of, hey, we need to get a couple of police in there. We need to get someone out. And that's where we step in and can certainly save a lot of time. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really, but it does get quite technical. Yeah, it's quite interesting work doing all the
Right.
winching and stuff.
You were deployed for Strike Force Durkin. I remember that. I remember all the cops having to go out onto
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, how was that for you? Were you there for a long time?
So Malcolm Naden, yeah, I was there for a week and then another week later on, and then a couple of days. So we were doing week rotations.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I flew up there the first time on Christmas Day on 2011, I think it was, and yeah, so I mean, you know what it was like. It was a basic camp, and had all the tactical police up there, and it was really interesting work actually because they sort of kept getting reports of items being stolen from remote cabins,
Yeah.
and they had little sightings from fire bush cams and things like that, and they thought they knew he was in some sort of area, but it was still a massive search area. And so we flew up there, and then we would get a briefing every morning, and we would take the TOU guys out and drop them in at various huts. There's so many little huts and sheds and things up there. We drop them in and they go in and search, do an entry, search the premises and make sure he wasn't there. And then we'd fly off to another place. And we also flying detectives around and stuff like that. So yeah, it was interesting work.
Yeah.
Really interesting work and beautiful part of the state. I wasn't there when he was caught. Like that was some months later, but I deployed a few times on that job. Um, and it was really valuable from the point of working away from base. So you don't have all the resources. And we had fuel organised and we had a place to sleep and that, and they were giving us our food, but we had to manage ourselves. So it was really good. It was a really good experience. It was an interesting job too.
Yeah, it seemed to go for a really long time. I remember like months and months.
Oh, I did.
And like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
said, like you sort of kept missing him as well. Like his
There were a few close calls. I think there was a couple of close calls where they got dropped, police got dropped at a premises and then they were in the front door and he went out the back door and that sort of thing. They kept missing him. Yeah, he was pretty skilled bushman and he was just used to living off the land. I mean, he did it for years. And so, yeah, I was actually wondering, because just after the TOU guy got shot and I was up there about a week after that and flying around and I'm looking down and you could barely see through the canopy in some areas. And I was thinking, geez, I wonder if he's down there watching us. We knew he had guns, like rifles and stuff. And I'm thinking, I wonder where he is. And you kind of had to put it out of your mind. Otherwise you'd just be, yeah, you wouldn't do the job.
no. And a helicopter's much easier to hear and see than one single man in the
Yeah,
city.
yeah. Oh, we were a
Oh
big
my
fat
God.
target. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a good job. I really enjoyed that.
Do you want to talk about did you want to talk about your critical incident in 2019? You don't have to.
Yeah. 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 So this is the job that I think this is the job that tipped me over. Yeah. So this was early 2019. It was an afternoon or just after lunch. I was on the duty crew, so I was on the helicopter that responds to patrol jobs. We got called to the Hume Highway up at Yagoona. The police had tried to stop a car. The car had reversed into them, rammed their car and disabled it and taken off. So we got called, hey, search for this vehicle of interest. The offender was wanted. So we took off, and the location we were going to was only 5 or 6 minutes from our base at the airport. So I thought, oh, okay. And I was probably a bit complacent because it was afternoon, it was after lunch. We were going to finish up in a few hours, and I thought, oh, I don't know if we'll catch this guy. Because how quickly does a car go and disappear into traffic? So we would have been overhead in 4 or 5 minutes. Got there, had a search around, couldn't find him. I was sitting up the front. I'm talking to the police on the ground, looking at the map and trying to work out and get an area, get a perimeter of where we think this car might be. The crewman sitting behind me is using the camera system. He's searching front yards and searching streets and looking for people that look out of place. We got a call to go to a shopping centre, which was I think it was up near Chilora, so it's just further down the road. And they said, oh, a delivery truck's been stolen, a Woolworths truck's been stolen. So I said, oh, yeah, that's fairly close. Wonder if it's connected. So we started to head up there. And of course, we got there. And then there's a report of, oh, we've located this car that had rammed the police car, and it was there where the truck had been stolen. So we're like, okay, well, he's stolen a truck. So we're wondering, where's this truck going to go? We just seemed to be always one or two steps behind him, and which worried me. And I couldn't get up to where he was. We kept getting reports of things happening, and we'd get there late to the scene, and he was somewhere else. The next thing was, we've had accidents on King George's Road. There's a truck that's rammed cars off the road heading down towards the M5. And I thought, oh, that's got to be him. So then we're flying south. We're heading down so we've moved further suburbs down towards the south. And as you get closer towards the city, you come up towards controlled airspace, which is part of Sydney Airport. And so there's like a big diameter, a big perimeter of airspace where you need to get permission to go in, because that's where the commercial flights are leaving and landing and taking off. So we're pilots calling up, trying to get clearance to get into this airspace closer to the city. And I'm looking for this truck and I can't find it. And we're just frantically searching. And then there's another job. Go over to another channel over near Ramsgate, I think it was. There's a man's crashed a truck. He's taken a taxi at knife point. He stabbed someone. And so I thought, oh no, this is out of control. It had to be the same guy. So we got overhead. We find the truck, the stolen truck. It's there. There's people helping out this guy. He's in the middle of the road. He's got a stab wound. Police are everywhere. And they're saying to us, hey, we need help to find this stolen taxi. And we're talking 3 p.m. on a weekday. And it's just over near sort of Ramsgate area. It was Brighton Los Sands. It was busy. There was so many cars. Where do you start searching? And I honestly started thinking, well, so this guy's stolen a truck. He's stolen a taxi. He's had no issue with stabbing someone. He's violent. He's smashing into cars. I start to think, is he some sort of lone wolf character who really wants to hurt people? Because he clearly is having an episode. And it really worried me that we couldn't catch up to him, with all the technology that we had, and we could move so fast across from one side of the city to the other, and we couldn't get to this guy. And I started to feel really helpless. It really bothered me. And the radio traffic on the channel was getting quite amped up. Cars were calling over each other. There was a couple of sightings of the taxi down a bit further to the south, and cars would race down there, and then they lost him. And so there's all these little pursuits starting and finishing, and eventually another pursuit was engaged, and I saw the taxi pass in front of us at the end of on a cross street. We took up a position behind him. He was heading north up towards Sydney Airport, where the runways run over the top of the road there, and he was flying. He was weaving in and out of traffic, just like high speed. There was some cars following him. The pursuit was really, really moving fast. And so I felt this real anxiety, which had been growing for the last 40 minutes of the flight. I've got to catch this guy, I've got to get this guy. Like this is, and I honestly, the way he was driving, I was thinking he's going to kill someone or really hurt someone. And I had to get this pursuit stopped. He turned around. He turned around just before the tunnel, came back towards us. So he's flying towards us, and we were really low. We couldn't move anywhere because we had commercial airliners in front of us that were coming into land to Sydney Airport. So we were really restricted in where we could be in the airspace. He turned under us, and we took up following the pursuit. And then the manner of driving got even worse. As he would come to red lights, he'd be up on the footpath, going through red lights, like breezing past pedestrians. He was knocking over rubbish bins. There were school kids out. By that stage, it's 3:30. School kids out on the footpath. He was going around them, and my heart was in my mouth. He had cars calling over each other on the radio. I tried to make calls. I couldn't get out. It was just so hectic. It was out of control, and I was really panicked. And I think I started to get real tunnel vision. I was focused on the screen in front of me, which was displaying the camera image, and I was also looking down the side because I could see his car if I looked down my window just to the left. And I was just focused on that. I lost my perspective, my situational awareness around me. I started to lose my auditory, my sound. I know there was a couple of calls that I just missed just because I was so wrapped up in what I was seeing. And I think that was the early signs of real panic. So basically this person, he drove the taxi through to an intersection. He actually stopped in the middle of an intersection. He got out. The police pulled up right near him at gunpoint. He got out. He pulled out a large knife and he killed himself. It was like, it was so violent, and it was just, I could not believe it. So then you've got a crime scene in the middle of a busy intersection. The police were right there with him. They went to resus him, but obviously he was dead. There was no coming back. So we helped put in some roadblocks, some perimeters to maintain the crime scene, and then they had no further use for us. And so after this really intense, dynamic job that had been building for 45 minutes came to a head, and then there was no further need from us. So they said, okay, you can return to base. So we flew back to base, and it was dead quiet. We flew back to base. 7 or 8 minutes in, the aircraft was sitting there, and it was silence. And I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and it was horrible, horrible. And we landed, and I just sat in my seat, and I was thinking, oh, I don't want to go inside. This is a critical incident. No. What did I say on the radio? Did I make a good enough call? Because that was part of our job, was helping to call the pursuit, call the danger to the cars on the ground. When they were overloaded with what was going on, I could call, traffic or hazards coming up. Had I made enough calls? Had I told radio about what was going on? And so I started to second guess what I'd done. It was all that. Anyway, we went inside, and I went inside, and no one said a thing. Walked in through the operations room, and where we've got a big screen, big panel of screens there, and there's the image of our downlink from our video was up there on the screen, and people were just looking at it. It was frozen, and no one said a word. And the boss came out and put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Come on, let's come down to the office here." And yeah, it was a horrible time. I got support from work. I got really good support from the bosses. The bosses were awesome. But I was really, it really rattled me. It really rattled me, that job. I mean, I'd been to self-harm and suicide-related jobs so many times. One of the big jobs that we would do all the time was body recoveries and stuff like that. But never before had I seen someone take their life. And we'd been following this guy for nearly an hour across the city, and he's doing this, he's doing that, he's doing this, all just 2 steps ahead of us the whole time. just can't quite catch up to him. So there's that growing anxiety in you that I've got to get this guy. We've got to stop this guy before he kills someone. He took his life, and then there was this huge anticlimax. So yeah, I think I panicked on the way home. I probably had a little panic attack. I was just completely shook up. I had to pull over. I felt hot. I felt dizzy, sick in my stomach. I started breathing really rapidly, all these sort of symptoms, and I didn't know what it was. I'd had a couple of little things like that happen at work before, but I didn't really connect the dots, and I didn't know that it was related to PTSD. Got home, and that night I had really bad dreams. And for several nights afterwards, I had really bad dreams. And I'd be in bed and I'd picture the offender standing there at the foot of my bed, and it felt so real. And it was just horrible. So that really rattled me. Yeah, that was, I think that was the job that tipped me over the edge.
Yeah.
I didn't fly for a lot longer. I had maybe half a dozen more flights after that, various jobs. And each time I got up into the air, I started to feel really anxious. I started to feel a bit uncomfortable, which was really strange for me because I'd flown for several years and I was comfortable and I knew my job and I had no issues with responding to stuff and I was really comfortable in the air doing. And then I'd get in and I'd sit down and I'd just feel this weight of like, oh no, what happens if we get called to this, or what happens if it's this job, or I have to do that. It wasn't the being in the helicopter so much. It was, oh, what if I get a pursuit? What if I have to find someone who's missing, or what if there's a suicide, or like it didn't matter. It was any job, and I knew I couldn't respond. I just didn't think I could put myself in that position. So I had a meeting with the chief pilot and I told him, I sat down and was totally honest with him. And I said, look, I'm not feeling good. This is on my mind. And he said, well, you need to step back from flying. So I did. That was hard.
Yeah. Especially seeing as you can see that you loved it so much as well.
Yeah.
That would have been super, super difficult. Do you want to take a moment? Like that was intense.
Yeah.
I'll just pause it. So after that and then being grounded, is that what you would say? Like,
Yeah. So, look, I just came to the realization that I was becoming more and more anxious leading up to flights. And I was getting in the air and as jobs were called, I just felt this anxiety about responding, and I just didn't feel that it was fair to put other crew in the position of having to fly with me and having to carry me and compensate for that. It just wasn't the right thing to do. I lost a lot of confidence, which was strange because up until then I was always happy flying and I knew my job and I had no issues generally. And yeah, I lost a lot of confidence with it. So I went to speak to the chief pilot and he said he would pull me down from flying duties, which was, I gave him no choice. I don't blame him. It's what had to happen. After I started having the symptoms, I reached out to EAP and they put me in touch with a psychologist. I did have a few sessions, but I didn't really connect with her. And I really don't really think she was trauma informed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does make a difference. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's different though, like that being trauma informed can come from so many angles. So having that from a policing or first responder perspective is so important. And if they don't
Yeah.
have that, it makes it so much more difficult.
Yeah, like she was a lovely lady, and I'm sure she was experienced, but she sort of attacked it from more of a holistic sort of, are you depressed or you anxious or you're stressed or, which I know now in hindsight that the reason why it didn't feel like the right fit for me with the therapy was that it wasn't really addressing what was it beneath it, and maybe I wasn't being completely honest with her. So I only had a few sessions and then I was back at work, but I was working in the office doing safety work mostly and a bit of supervising, but I wasn't flying. And I didn't really expect this to happen, but the not flying bit and the not being deployed on jobs and working with the other crew really affected me and my identity, my feeling of identity. And I started to get this real growing feeling of just being an outsider. Strange as that may seem, I'd worked there for a number of years and I knew everyone. But the fact I was now no longer going out on the jobs with them, doing the stuff, the risky stuff, and putting myself, I felt I didn't have skin in the game. I was no longer relevant, and what I was doing was not worthwhile. So it really caused me to doubt myself, and that no doubt didn't help my mental health. So I continued. I had started having panic attacks, and I started feeling quite nauseous and quite sick before work. So leading up to work, after a few shifts off, before I would go back to work, I'd start to feel really anxious and really sick about going to work. Um,
Yeah,
so
I had that too.
yeah,
It's this
horrible.
it's so horrible. And it is that just anxiety of, like, what's coming. And obviously for you, and you go to work and I don't know, it sounds like you felt a bit guilty as well that you couldn't do what you
Yeah,
wanted to do and feel like you were making a contribution like you used to. That's horrible things to feel when,
I
obviously
know.
you're going there.
And it's I don't blame anyone else. It was all, I was internalizing it all. It wasn't like anyone at work treated me any differently. But in my head, this narrative was this brutal, hey, you're not crew anymore. You're not flying. You're not out there. You're sitting in your comfortable office. Like you're not worthy. You're not doing the job. You're not this. You're not that. Like the judgment, the self-judgment was just brutal. Yeah. So that I really struggled with that for a while. Um,
Aren't we just so horrible to ourselves?
yeah.
Like, things that you would never ever
Yeah.
say to another person
I
ever.
know.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I know. There's that real feeling of, when you're on a team at work and it's so important to be part of the team and to feel like you're pulling your weight and you're contributing and you've got this real this shared brotherhood and this shared experience. And if you're no longer doing that, you just feel like an interloper. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, um, you know. So that's how I felt.
How long did you do that for before you decided? Like, how did that decision come about for you to not go back to work?
Um, I kept going to work and I was working in the office doing other things for about 12 to 18 months. I really pushed through
Wow.
for a long
Yeah.
time and I shouldn't have. By, several months after that, I was getting panic attacks every week, every couple of days. They'd be at work, they'd be in the car on the way home, they'd be at home, and I'd just be a mess for 20 minutes. I would be driving to work and feel this overwhelming feeling of fear and panic, and I'd have to pull off the side of the road and I'd have a full episode and be shaking in the car and totally out of it. And then I'd pull myself together and drive off to work and uh, you know, trying to convince myself, oh, there's nothing wrong. You're just feeling a bit stressed because, you've been busy lately and there's nothing wrong with you, not knowing really what PTSD was and not knowing that that's what I had, and not validating myself. Going, oh, just, you're being silly. Just put it out of your mind. And then the bad dreams and the stuff like that. Yeah, I was getting tired. I had a long commute to work. I was sitting in the car. I just felt I was grinding myself down. Um, yeah, it was terrible.
And, I ask, um,
Yeah.
you had a family at that time as well?
Yeah, I had wife and two kids. They were young kids at that stage. They were probably only 2 or 3 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot, isn't it? There's a lot going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I absolutely adore my family, and I often think without my kids and my wife and that, I don't know where I'd be today. They really, but also at the time, my life was so busy, and you're being hit from every side, and it was, yeah, I just was not coping. I was not coping, and so. I wasn't sleeping well because I had nightmares. So I'd wake up really tired, only getting a small amount of sleep. I wasn't eating well. I'd I'd snack, I'd eat junk food, I'd just have energy drinks in the car on the way to work because I'm just trying to keep my eyes open. And it was just, and then I'm exhausted, so I don't want to exercise. And I'm just, yeah, you know how
You're
it
in the
goes.
cycle.
In
You're
the
in the full
cycle, and
cycle. Yeah.
everything, you lose everything, all the important holistic stuff that keeps us all mentally and everything, you lose it all, and you just, it's only going to go one way.
Yeah. Yeah. After your first psychologist and you really felt like you didn't click, what did you do then to get help? Did you stop seeing anyone or did you
Yeah,
go
I
and seek
stopped.
out? You stopped, yeah.
I stopped. Yeah, only saw her for a few times and then didn't go back. um, and then I didn't see anyone at all until I called off sick. I just I just self-managed it, except I wasn't really managing it at all. Looking back, I was in a really bad way, and I shouldn't have been at work. Well, I should not have been going to work for several months. I was barely surviving, and eventually, when I did call off, I was actually on holidays. I was off for a couple of weeks with the kids, and I was due to go back to work in a few days. And each day, I was getting a day closer to my next shift, and I was just feeling this weight in my chest, this sick feeling. I felt convinced something was going to happen. I just had this feeling of yeah, something bad was going to happen. I couldn't put my finger on it. I just felt horrible. I was nauseous again, and everything was bad. And I thought to myself, you're on holidays, you've got your kids at home, they're playing in the backyard or whatever. Like, you should be enjoying this time. And I wasn't. I was completely down a dark hole. So I rang up my GP and I said, look, I need to come and see you. And I did. And when I sat down in his chair, he knew something was wrong. And he asked me what was wrong, and I just fell apart, completely fell apart. And he said to me, "Well, you can't go back to work. You're not for a while. You are not in a good way." And he said, who's at home with you today? You know, have you got people at home?" And I think I know now that he was worried about me, and so I went home and I had to ring up work, and I had to ring up the one of the inspectors and say, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I can't come to work next week." And I don't even remember what I said, but I just said, "Hey, look, I'm in a really bad state. I've just been to my GP. I can't do this. I need to get myself sorted." And yeah, I don't even remember where the conversation went. Spoke for a few minutes, and then yeah, and then I got a referral to see a psychologist and psychiatrist, and I sort of went from there. Yeah,
How did that feel for you after you saw the GP and
yeah,
they've obviously validated what you were feeling and saying, you're crook, mate. You need to take a minute for yourself.
yeah.
And then making the phone call, which I can imagine would have been really difficult after already feeling so guilty about being on the desk.
Oh,
How did
yeah.
it feel after that, making the phone call, hanging up the phone, knowing that you didn't have to go back?
I felt a little bit of relief, just knowing that I had a little bit of breathing room in front of me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how long it was going to be. Honestly, because I think when you're like this, you're in denial. You're trying to convince yourself and everyone else that you're really not that bad and that I'm okay, just having a bad day. You try and lie your way through it, and I thought, oh, maybe a month or two, and then I'll go back, and had no idea how long it was going to be. Yeah, I felt shame. I felt real shame for walking off the point in my estimation, that I'd left my workmates. I couldn't hack it anymore. The workplace is full of people who are still coming to work. They've had traumas. They're dealing with stuff every day, and you can't deal with it. What's wrong with you? Sort of thing. You're not holding up your end. Um, I felt terrible, but yeah, after the phone call was so hard, but afterwards I just felt a little bit of breathing room. I'm like, okay, I've put that to one side. I now need to sort myself out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
thought that
that's when,
might have been the case. That little, like even just
yeah.
a moment of relief, just to go,
Yeah.
okay, I can take a minute now and
Yeah.
figure out what's going on because it's so confusing, isn't it? And I think said it to so many people. Like, if you have a broken leg or a broken arm or you got a
Mm,
crook back, you can see it. Like,
yeah,
it's visual, and you can go, well, I don't feel very good because my arm is broken.
yeah,
But
yeah,
when it's internal, and no one, and you look at the same, your face
yeah,
looks the same, nothing changes.
yeah.
You might be a bit more depressed, obviously, but otherwise you look the same. It's so hard to accept. I found it personally so hard to
Mm,
accept that something was wrong because you can't see it. It's so
yeah.
difficult.
It really is, and you question yourself, and you feel, yeah, it feels like it lacks credibility.
Yeah.
Because people would ask you, "Oh, how you doing at work?" Or, "Oh, you look a little bit stressed," and I'm thinking, God, I was just like an hour ago, I had a full-on panic attack in the stairwell, and you have no idea how I'm feeling. I'm feeling terrible, but
Yeah.
oh no, I'm okay. And you just because you don't talk about it, and it's
Yeah.
pretty rare that you open up and talk to people. Because I was worried about losing my career. I loved being there. I'd worked hard to get a job there. I loved what I was doing. I didn't want to raise that flag up and go, "Hey, I'm not well. I need help," because it was ingrained in us over years and years and years that if you did that, well, your career is over. I now know that that doesn't have to be the case, but at the time, that was what I felt was like, oh, you can't, you know. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's so tough.
mm,
You mentioned that you did EMDR.
yeah, that's right.
Something I'm really interested in because I haven't done it,
Oh,
but
okay,
I've got a podcast episode. I'm not sure if it'll come out before or after this, maybe after, um, with a lady that she's a ex-paramedic and she's now
okay,
an EMDR therapist,
yeah,
and she was talking about it, and it sounds incredible,
yeah.
coming from someone that's never done it though. How did you find that?
It's yeah, I've been doing EMDR with my psychiatrist for about 3 years, probably more. Um, and at first, I didn't believe it at first. Like I thought, oh, this is a bit wishy. So I sit in a seat. He sets up a stand in front of me with a light, like a light bar like this, and you follow the little light moving from side to side, and it's a bit hypnotic, and it sounds a bit airy fairy. What's this going to do? But you'd be amazed. And when you're asked to think about a traumatic event and picture it in your mind and then follow the light, all this stuff comes to the fore, and it's incredible. It's exhausting. It's mentally
Yeah.
draining. You come out of it and you feel, oh, I could sleep now. And I've had real distressing emotional times in the chair, really emotional times where I've had flashbacks and I've had to get up and walk out because I just can't breathe. And there's other times that, you get through it and then you come out and you go, oh, I feel all right about that now. And after a few sessions, you say, now, how do you feel about it if I talk about this now? And you're like, yeah, you know what? That's okay. I wouldn't choose to think about that. It's not pleasant, but I'm okay with that. It doesn't scare me. So that's, for me, I think it's been amazing. It's been a long road. So we've worked through a number of traumas, like a number of events, and each one could be 4, 5, 6 sessions or more. And sometimes you walk out feeling terrible, sometimes better, but overall, it's an improvement. And I look back now and I think I wouldn't be where I am now without that therapy. So
Yeah.
I really recommend it.
Yeah.
It's worked for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm sort of keen to give it a go actually. I think it'll be
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
But it is intense.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I've heard
Yeah.
that some people really dislike it because it's brought up
Mm.
stuff that they didn't realize was a thing that was sort of sitting in the back there.
It's an interesting thing. The way it was described to me is that the brain is just working in this left to right, left to right, left to right thing, and it somehow recategorizes the memories and moves them to a part of the brain where they're not so threatening, and it's really interesting the way
Yeah,
it.
the lady that I had on, she described it like a library with a librarian, and
Okay.
yeah, it's like they're books that haven't been put away properly, and you just
Oh
get them
yeah.
out and sort of deal with them with the light, and then the librarian takes it and then puts it away.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, that sounds quite lovely, actually. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's much more intense than that, but like, oh, that
Yeah.
sounds nice.
Yeah, that's a really good way of describing it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I think we should talk about your book because
Yeah.
I really enjoyed reading it.
Oh, thank you.
And, I've read quite a few books now from police, and I just loved how yours was so different as well. Obviously, being in highway, I don't know many that have written about that, and then PolAir as well. And just all of the things that go along with both of those,
Yeah.
types of policing, they're so different.
Yeah.
How did the book come about?
Yeah, I actually didn't set out to write a book. And if you'd have told me 2 years ago I was going to write a book, I would have said no way. My psychologist said to me, I was working through some stuff, and I was having some flashbacks and things. And she said, "Why don't you write about your traumas? Why don't you start journaling? Write about things that are worrying you, and just explore it all. Put it down on paper, and there could be some sort of power in doing that, identifying which parts of it are, and so I started doing that. I started writing about different events, and then memories would come up from work, and sometimes they were funny things like, oh yeah, and this happened that day, and that was a funny story, so I'd write that down. And I don't know about you, but my memory, I seem to forget large chunks of my work career, but I remember some things really clearly, and so I would write down little notes about things that I thought were notable. And I started to get this collection of little short stories, which was all it was. A funny story or a serious job, or this happened or that happened, and I thought, I just want to put this together for my family and have a record of my service, and so my kids can look at it in years to come and go, "Oh, Dad did this," and um, eventually it sort of turned into a book. And I don't remember why I decided, but one day I thought, you know what, I'm just going to try and see if I can get it published. I didn't hold out much hope because it's very hard, very, very hard to get first time authors to get published. And so I sent it off to a few places. I got it edited professionally, and I polished it and went back over it and tried to make it as good as I could. Because there were parts of it that were just, I was reading it back going, oh, what the hell is this? What have I written here? And so I had to get a bit of work making it nicer and easier to read. And then I sent it off, and eventually one night I got a phone call from a lady from Big Sky Publishing, and she said, "Hey, we'd really like to work with you. I love this manuscript." And I thought, "Oh my goodness, what is going on?" Uh, and it was just a roller coaster ever since then. So
Yeah,
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
That's
I'm still in shock when I think about it. I just received the box of the first prints last week, and opening the box and pulling my book out is incredible, and it's really I think it's really helping me on my journey. It sort of validates how I've been feeling and validates the emotions and the stuff that I've been dealing with. To see it there in paper, I hope that people enjoy it. I hope that maybe it can help people, and I'd love other people to share their stories. There's a lot of feeling of vulnerability, and there's been times when I've looked at it and gone, "Oh no, I can't believe I've done this. Have I done the right thing?" But I think you've got to just keep moving forward, and all of us have got a story. I just happen to have written mine down, and I hope other people do as well, because there's real power in that.
yeah.
Um, I think.
There is I went to a conference last month, and they were talking about narrative therapy. I'd never
Okay.
heard of it. I'm like, what is that? So I Googled it, and it's
Yeah.
basically just what you've just explained. It's like
Okay. Yeah.
writing down your journey. And I'm like, of course, like I don't mind journaling. I'm not
Mm.
I could be better at it. But there is such power in writing down things,
Yeah.
especially that concern you, like in just getting it out of your mind. So I
Yeah.
can imagine that would have been quite therapeutic as well to go through that process.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And there were times when I sat down and I was like, I can't write today. I can't even think about it. I'm not having a good day. So I didn't. And there were
Yeah.
other days when it just came to me, and I just, you know what, I'm just going to write a few hundred words. And so it took a good 18 months. But just chipped away at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, something we don't talk about a lot in especially the cops and getting out of the police and going through a mental health journey, roller coaster usually,
Mm.
is the sense of you really lose a sense of purpose. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can just be getting to the next appointment or ticking
Yeah.
the next form that you've got to bloody fill out, or how shit it is right at the start when there's so much going on and you're actually least capable of doing all that stuff. But then after, a little while, a month or two, and you sort of settle into it a bit, then what do you do? Like, there's no sense of purpose. You're not going to work. Maybe you've got a family.
Yeah.
But to write down this and then to decide that you're going to turn it into a book, I can imagine would have given you some sort of sense of purpose again.
Yeah, it has. I really struggled with that. Like you said, after I left, and the loss of identity is huge. Because I certainly did attribute a lot of myself to being a cop. I was a cop, and before I had my family, that's kind of all I was. And so, yeah, when you leave that, suddenly you're separated from that. It's like, what am I? Well, I'm still a dad, of course, and a husband, but yeah, you struggle to find that purpose, and how do I continue to help people, or how do I do something that's meaningful? That was huge for me. No longer having the ability to go out and improve people's day and help just do something productive. So yeah, I'm hoping the book, well, it certainly has kept me occupied, and I hope that it continues to help me with that. And I hope it encourages other people and gives people some hope, because I mean, I was in a dark place for a while, and now I'm okay. But if I can get through it, I'd like to think that anyone can. It's just we're all on a different road, but like there's a lot of shared adversity, and I think I just would like people to know that there is hope. There is hope.
Yeah, absolutely. It can feel very hopeless a lot of
Yeah,
the time,
totally.
can't it? So for people to know that there is hope and for us to talk about it too, um, yeah, it's so important. What tactics do you use now? Because you wrote tactics, and I like to
Oh,
think of them as tactics.
oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, what do you
Like,
do to look after yourself these days?
well, I I'm still writing, which for me is kind of my escape. So I do like writing about anything and everything, and I'm trying to get myself to move more. One of the unfortunate byproducts of being off and being unwell for a while was that I just didn't want to go out. I didn't want to be around crowds and busy places and noises, and so I just became a bit of a hermit. So I'm trying to get myself more active, that sort of thing. I think getting outdoors and, whether you're going for a walk by the beach or just getting some fresh air is huge. I'm trying to sleep more. I'm like, sleep is massive. That was a real issue for me when I first went off, and I just couldn't process anything, and I wasn't even in the right headspace to be able to deal with my problems because I was getting 4 or 5 hours a night, and you're just not gonna, you can't think straight. So sleep's huge. Um, yeah. So I'm trying to look at things a bit more holistically.
Yeah, that's so good because it is a mind body experience as well. That we're all
Yeah.
connected and all that sort of stuff. So it's important to do things that are good for your body because it helps your mind, and then
Yeah.
do things that are good for your mind because it helps your body. Like it all works
Yeah.
together, sort of thing. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got 4 questions that I've
Oh,
written down. They're pretty
okay.
easy. Like, it's not hard. I
I'm
want
so,
to. I think that I don't know. Obviously, because we talk about trauma on the podcast, but I forget
yeah.
to ask people about their happiest times because we can forget that they were so like fun
Yeah.
shenanigans, like just good time. So, what was your happiest time that you can remember from being in the cops?
From being in the cops.
Yeah, it could be
Definitely.
anything. Actually, it could be anything
Um,
else.
I miss having a laugh with people at work. And it could be being on a car crew and you just go to a funny job where you've met an absolute character, just a crazy person. And you get back in the car and you just look at each other and you burst out laughing. And it's just hilarious. Being police, we laugh at the funniest things. It's all black humor. So I miss those times, having a laugh. I miss, yeah, things from PolAir, being on jobs in beautiful places like landing in remote areas, and you shut the aircraft down and it's just quiet and still, and it's just amazing. Just, yeah, being in these places. So I do miss that. I miss seeing the countryside from the air. Yeah, they're good times.
Yeah, it's nice to remember. What's your biggest learning from your journey over the last few years? Do you think?
I think I think you can do more than what you give yourself credit for. It's could be quite easy when you're battling a mental health condition to get in this mindset of I really can't do anything, and I'm really not. you lose confidence. You go back to the basics. But I think humans are capable of a lot more than what they think they are. And if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, I would have not given myself much of a prognosis to be in a better place. But I am now in quite a better place. So yeah, I think anything's possible.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Any advice that you can share for anyone that's listening? I know that you said there is hope and all that sort of stuff. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, be honest with yourself. And if you're starting to feel like the jobs are adding up and you're getting stuff weighing on your mind, like it's normal to think about things when you're at work, but when you're at home or when you're in the car driving home, if your mind's constantly going back to particular jobs and incidents and stuff, and like be honest with yourself and put your hand up, and that doesn't have to mean saying, hey, I can't work anymore. It might be just, hey, I need to go and talk to someone. And whether you do that through EAP or whether you go out by yourself and just find a psychologist, have a chat, or connect with your mates, definitely connect with your mates, because chances are someone else is going through something similar, and there's real strength in sharing that. Yeah, but you got to be honest with yourself. For too long, I tried to convince myself that I was okay and I was getting through it, and it was just a rough patch, and I was in denial. And but you need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so hard though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And my last question is, what is the thing that you're most looking forward to in the, next few weeks or months or this year even?
Oh, I'm really, as silly as it sounds, I'm looking forward to seeing the book on a shelf of a bookstore somewhere.
Hell yeah.
That'll be, I think that'll be a bit surreal. I am, yeah, I have this thing if I ever have to go anywhere and you go to the airport and you buy a book and I think if you could see your book on the bookshelf in the airport, you'd be like, oh, okay, wow, that'd be pretty cool. But look, otherwise than that, it's around my kids and my family. Like my daughter's got gymnastics comps coming up, and I just love seeing that sort of stuff and witnessing them grow up. So that's pretty exciting for me.
Isn't that just the best thing? My little girl goes to gymnastics now
Yeah.
and my boys play basketball, but
Yeah.
I think that is probably my greatest joy, is to see them having so much fun doing something that they love.
It's amazing. And the joy they get from learning a move or a routine or something, and that when they can finally nail it, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they look at you to see if you've seen it,
Yes.
because you're not the one that's looking at your phone, you're actually watching a kid, and you
Yeah.
can like give them the thumbs up, or it's so good.
It's beautiful. Yeah. My son's like that with swimming as well. He loves swimming. And so he loves when he gets moved up to the next level, and he just loves it. So yeah, seeing the joy that they have in their sports and what they're doing is great.
Yeah. The book is called Hidden Scars, and it is out, is it the 30th of?
Yeah, about the 1st of May. So it's on pre-order now via Amazon. If people go to my website, there's links there to buy it. But otherwise, it should be in stores from around the 1st of May.
That's so exciting. I'll link to your website in the show notes. I definitely recommend that people read it. It is amazing. Thank you so much for my copy. It's so generous. I love it.
It's all right. Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you so much, and have a really great day.
I really appreciate you having me on your show. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any new ones. We release fresh content every Tuesday. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a review. I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Tactical Yoga Australia, and share this episode with your friends, family and workmates to spread inspiration. Your support means the world. My name is Rosie Skeen. Join me again next week for another empowering and positive episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Until then, be kind to your mind and trust in the magic of your consistent and positive efforts. Triumph beyond your trauma is closer than you think. Have the best week.